Well, the British have done 4 times their quota. I think the Dutch have done pretty well too. I don't know exactly, but certainly Germany is very high up there. They're the best. They have the most signatures. They have probably over 600,000 signatures now. I think it's absolutely possible to stop the TTIP, and it depends on citizens, and it depends on how many people know about it and how many people are mobilized, because once citizens learn what is in this treaty, they are outraged and they join movements, they sign up, and they also very often join movements because there's something in it for all kinds of groups to hate. You know, it's bad for consumers, it's bad for nature, for the planet, it's bad for health, it's bad for the food we eat. Every aspect of everyday life is affected. So intellectual property, what you can do on the internet, if it costs you something. The TTIP is a way of changing all of the standards in Europe so that they will go down for Europeans. And the idea is, and they say this, the companies say this in the Transatlantic Economic Council, that they want to integrate our economies. Well, that means integrate it downwards, because if we integrate, that means it doesn't mean that the US standards are going to go up, which is what some US trade unions thought for a while, that we could negotiate upwards, but they can't. It means that the standards are going to go down and that the judicial function is going to be privatized.
No. Okay.
The Commission relies on a study that they had done by a client. They very often go to the Centre for Economic Policy Research in London, and they pay them to do studies. So this think tank, these people who do the reports, are clients. They get paid. So they have an interest in giving the Commission what it wants. And they said in their report that in their most optimistic case, in 2027, every family would have an extra 500 euros and there would be more jobs. And another study has been done since then by a man called Jeronim Capaldo, and he used a different model, because the people in London used a model where they assume, they pretend that if a person loses a job, he finds another job immediately, which is not true, as we know. And the other man, Capaldo, used a different model, which is the United Nations model, and which does not assume things that cannot happen in a real economy. So his conclusion is that Europe would lose 600,000 jobs and that we would lose income. And there have been other studies that have shown the same thing, that it is much too optimistic to say that we would gain jobs and growth. And actually, we would lose both jobs and growth. Companies would leave, many things would be disrupted, small and medium enterprise would be affected. They're beginning to understand that they would not be able to keep the same clients. If you are a small or medium enterprise and you have one client to whom you are giving components, you're selling components to a car manufacturer or some business like that, and if that company leaves for the United States to set up there, then the small and medium enterprises in Europe are dead. There are a lot of things wrong with this treaty, which would affect a lot of small businesses, and the businesses could not use the judicial mechanism against the state because they're too small. They don't have enough money to support the costs of an arbitration trial like that. So they have nothing to gain from the treaty either. I'm all for small business, and they supply 85% of all the jobs in Europe. So, that's where the real activity is. It's not with the great big transnational corporations. Well, I don't think it can be finished in 2015. I don't think it can be finished this year, and that is also pretty much the official assessment, that they cannot finish it this year. Once we get to 2016, a lot will depend on the Americans. The President Obama is trying to obtain from the Congress a vote for what is called fast track. And fast track means that the Congress can only say yes or no. They cannot say, yes, but I want an amendment here, or I want to take this out, or they are not allowed to do that. So now there's a movement in Congress where even some Republicans are saying, we won't vote for this in the present state. So we don't know, but if he doesn't get fast track, then I think it can be killed by both sides, by the Americans working in the same way we are working in Europe. The treaty can be killed in 2016, because that is the year where the American presidential elections will take place, and the candidates are probably not going to want to put TTIP on the agenda. And it is very little discussed now in the American press, but 2 days ago there was a huge article in the New York Times about it, and that means that other media will have to start talking about it too. So I'm pretty sure we can get rid of it, but we have to remain mobilized until that happens. Well, we stopped the MAI in 1997-98. That was the multilateral agreement on investment. And as the Italians said, dire mai al mai, never to the mai. In Italian, it's MAI means never. And that was their slogan. But we won on that one. We got rid of, the French pulled out. We had a very good campaign in France, and we had a commission, and some of us testified in front of the commission. I testified, and we won. I mean, France said, we don't need this, and Lionel Jospin he didn't know about it really. He hadn't much heard of it, and then when he learned what it was, then he withdrew, and then the whole thing collapsed, so we won. But the companies come back with the same ideas. They wanted to take over the courts then, and they still want to take over the courts, and they wanted to regulate that, etc., etc. So democracy is a never-ending struggle. It's not something you have once for all. That's why this law in Spain about gagging people and preventing protest is so terrible.
I don't know.
I don't think Wolfgang Schäuble is really thinking about the TTIP. I think he wants to punish Greece. He wants to. It's really about that. It's about what they say it's about. I don't think they're thinking about TTIP. And the Social Democrats, which is the partner of the Merkel's coalition and the partner of Schäuble's party, has already come out to some degree against the judicial system, privatizing the judiciary. So that is dangerous ground for any minister in that government to say, we're against the TTIP or we are for the TTIP rather, and we don't want Greece to be able to do anything about it. I think that's too far down the road for them. They're thinking much more in immediate terms, and they're thinking about punishing the Greeks. People don't know that in German, the word Schulde is debt. That means debt. And Schulde also means fault. If you ever went to Mass, you know you say mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And in Germany they say meine Schulde, meine Schulde. And that means both fault and debt. And so there's an idea there of punishment. And I have I have sinned. And when you have sinned, you have to ask for reparation. And that means you have to pay every penny of your debt.
They are doing to Greece.
And that is the attitude of Wolfgang Schulde. And he's completely out of his depth. I mean, the Social Democrats even say that this man should leave the government because he's hopeless. Well, all progressives in France are for Podemos. That's very simple. We all hope that Podemos will win, and I know that there are nuances here, but in France there are no nuances. We don't want the Social Democrats, the PSOE, and we don't want the PPE with Rajoy, even less. So for us, what's left is not so much the Izquierda Unida, because that's been around for many, many years, but maybe a coalition of Izquierda Unida and Podemos. But in any case, we see Podemos as a tremendous opportunity for Europe, not just for Spain, but for Europe, as we see Syriza as a tremendous opportunity, not just for Greece, but also for Europe. So, yes, Podemos, a Podemos government would be able to say, we want our mandate back. We are not going to participate in these negotiations any longer. And that would be a very tough, I don't know if that could make the negotiations collapse, but I think it could. Even if Syriza withdrew its mandate, that could have a very big impact. And if they don't decide to withdraw the mandate, but afterwards they say we will not ratify this, this too would cause a lot of problems. The Commission would try to get over it. The Commission would try to jump over that hurdle. And juridically, legally, I don't know exactly what would happen, but it would certainly, normally, a country that refuses is, it only takes one, normally. But you know what they did to Ireland? When Ireland voted against the Constitution, they went back, or rather the Lisbon Treaty, the whole Commission went to Ireland, Barroso and all the top guns, and they said, you know, horrible things are going to happen to you if you don't ratify this treaty. So we don't know what would happen, but it would certainly start an avalanche of happenings in Europe which would be all to the good. Europe can be reformed, but they do everything they can not to reform. Well, the British have done 4 times their quota. I think the Dutch have done pretty well too. I don't know exactly, but certainly Germany is very high up there. They're the best. They have the most signatures. They have probably over 600,000 signatures now. I think it's absolutely possible to stop the TTIP and for all kinds of groups to hate. You know, it's bad for consumers, it's bad for nature, for the planet, it's bad for health, it's bad for the food we eat. Every aspect of everyday life is affected. So intellectual property, it depends on citizens, and it depends on how many people know about it and how many people are mobilized, because once citizens learn what is in this treaty, they are outraged and they join movements, they sign up, and they also very often join movements because there's something in it.